Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Something Something podcast and the Something About the Unknown podcast. And this is our first episode in
Woo!
Spooktober,
I
my
love it.
absolute favorite time of year. Again, I make horror movies. That's the bulk of what I watch is
That's
either
your
horror
jam.
movies or Hallmark movies. I am not ashamed of that at all. And Larry, to me, Halloween actually starts. Some people say September. To me, it starts in August, man.
Yeah,
The
I
second
agree.
you start seeing the spirit Halloween stores popping up, it's like,
Yes,
yeah, yeah, it's Halloween.
I agree. Because right as July ends, I look at Mitzi and I'm like, hey, you know what's coming up? It's time to start getting out the Halloween stuff, all the spooky stuff. So yeah,
This is
I agree.
Halloween. This is
This
Halloween. Halloween.
I agree. I agree. I agree. And and horror movies, that's your jam year round.
Yeah,
I find, okay, so I'm a beginner horror movie fan because I still watch them with my eyes, covered and
yeah.
and all that. But I do find myself right around August to start watching all the Halloween movies, right? Because
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Eric, but I think Halloween is, I don't know if I like Friday the 13th that well. To be honest,
The
it's weird.
franchise or the date?
No, the franchise. And even the date.
Well, to me, that's not a Halloween season movie. That's a
Right.
summer movie. In fact,
That which is, yeah. Because he
we're
was at
gonna get
sleepaway
into
camp.
we're gonna get into the thick of this now. What Halloween, I have this perfect segue for all of this.
Okay.
I remember when I was first writing one of my new scripts, you said, "Hey, set it in Halloween," and I went, "It doesn't fit the story." Because when you're doing that, Halloween has to be baked into the atmosphere.
Right. Yeah.
Now, one thing I'm very passionate about is gateway horror,
Hmm.
meaning PG-13, G-rated. In fact, that's more where I'm shifting now in my writing, what I like to
Hmm.
call pop horror, because I love
Yeah.
pop punk music and
Yeah.
ska music, all that stuff.
Yep.
So, one of the best introductions to horror movies to me is, I think you know what I'm going to say. It's a Disney movie about these three spooky sisters, Larry.
Yes. Hocus
Hocus
Pocus.
Pocus.
I love it.
And
Yeah.
that put, now, as a kid from New Jersey and the East Coast, Salem, Massachusetts was always known to me. Like
Yeah.
every TV show, I think Alvin and the Chipmunks did an episode about it once. Sabrina the Teenage Witch, which, by
Yep.
the way, it was really weird to me that a bunch of witches had a cat named Salem. That would be like me having a dog named Outfits. But Salem, Massachusetts is such an interesting place to me.
Yes. Yeah.
Rob Zombie's movie, The Witches of Salem, was maybe his best movie, but just the town overall, because they've embraced their history
Yeah.
so much. And we have someone, Larry, on the show. Introduce our guest, Larry.
Yes, I am so excited about this because once I knew that we had booked Dr. Vitka. Hi, Dr. Vitka. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Good. Hello. I'm Mike Vitka, Dr. Vitka from Spellbound Tours in Salem, Massachusetts. How are you guys?
Very
Doing
good.
great,
Very good.
excited.
I
Very good.
when you started talking about gateway horror, that got me excited because I don't even know when to get into it, but in addition to the tours here in Salem right now, there's something that's been put together called the Salem Scare Society.
Oh,
And it
Ooh,
is a group of friends who are promoting horror movies and horror events and video markets and stuff.
wow.
And one of the
awesome.
things that on the horizon that we're working on is actually a gateway horror project
Oh, wow.
Wow.
where we're
That's
all going to be
cool.
picking our favorite ones and doing little blurbs about them. And the one I'm picking, when you said New England set gateway
Yeah.
horror, my first thought was going to be Mr. Boogedy. When you
That's
said
another
Disney
great
gateway
one. Oh
horror, I was
my
like, boogity,
goodness.
boogity, boo. That's where
Yeah.
I was hoping you were going with that one.
Again, Bride of Boogity is another good one.
You got so here's the thing with so obviously when you talk about gateway horror, I mean, and this is always fascinating to hear Eric and any guest talk about horror movies because again, I'm not I only like horror movies from way far away and looking between my fingers and stuff like that. And to know that you might have started looking into like a gateway horror. I think that's perfect because a lot of people, and Eric, maybe you can talk about this. I don't know if there's any, there probably is, but I just don't know on streamers like gateway horror, that's not that is out there that has come out in the last few years. I'm not sure.
There's a bunch.
Is there? Because of
Yeah,
the streamers, right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, we're glad happy to have you on, Mike.
I'm happy to be here. I always love to talk about Salem and the paranormal and spooky things.
Yes,
So let's
yes,
get right into Salem. When I was looking for guests, your website, which we'll talk about, just really popped out to me, and just the spirit and atmosphere of Salem can be felt on the page because of the pictures
yeah,
and everything.
yeah, yeah. It's super cool. And even reading through your website, I mean, it sounds like, and I don't know if people realize all of the paranormal, obviously the witch hunts, the witch trials, but UFOs. And you even talk about like voodoo stuff. And so this is all, and I think it kind of all rolls into one, and that's what makes Halloween. But even more important, eh, do people, when they come to Salem, do they realize that there's other things other than the witch hunt? Are they surprised to learn about UFOs and voodooism?
People come to Salem generally for the witch trials.
Hmm.
Once they get here, well, one thing that's been attracting a lot of people is like what Eric mentioned is Hocus Pocus. Hocus
Yeah.
Pocus drives so many people to Salem. And then once they get here, they learn the real tragedy of what actually happened. And then from there, they go into the paranormal side of things. Then they go in deeper and deeper into the paranormal side of things, and they get really weird about it. You mentioned the UFOs, and one of my all-time favorite Salem stories, and usually on the tour, we focus more on the ghost stories and the Salem witch trials history, but one of the best UFO photographs that was taken in Salem, Massachusetts. They call it the 1952 Coast Guard UFO picture, and I bet you guys might have seen it. It's got a couple of smokestacks, it's got a couple of cars parked, and there's four glowing saucer-shaped
Okay,
things
yeah,
in the
yeah,
sky.
I've seen that.
And that was
Mm.
taken in the early morning hours. And this Coast Guard guy, he snapped a picture. He went and got his friend, and he saw it too. And then they turned it into the government. This was Project Blue Book era. And at first, the government folks came into Salem and they were saying, "This can't be real. This is reflection of light on the window." And then they looked deeper. There was no actual window pane through which the picture was taken.
Wow.
It could not have been light reflecting off of anything. And then we dug a little deeper and we found there were actually people other than the two Coast Guard guys who'd witnessed it. So there is some history behind it, and it's never been disproved. It's one of the very few UFO pictures that's still in the official unexplained file. J. Allen Hynek himself signed off on it saying, "I'm not going to say they're aliens, but we are going to say this is unexplained." And
Wow.
Wow.
for a while, it was, I believe, the first or second most requested photograph in the National Archives after the famous picture of Elvis meeting
Yeah.
Nixon. Uh,
Wow.
I
That's super cool.
and
Wow.
also Raymond Fowler, the UFO researcher, he was born in Salem, Massachusetts, and for a little while, I think in the 70s, he actually had a small-time observatory here. So if you dig a little under the surface, we've got some UFO history. Uh,
That's amazing.
That's
That's amazing. And
crazy.
And actually, before we started to record, Eric, you want to, because we talk about UFOs and we've talked about UFOs before on or something about the
Yeah.
unknown. And what happened, Eric? This is
Well,
this is why we don't want to talk
when
before we
we first
record.
started the show, whenever we had someone on and we would talk about the Men in Black, not the Will Smith movie, the people, Larry would always drop off. We don't know why. And then I'll admit it was one point we were talking about UFOs and I purposely kicked him off
You
just to keep the legend going. But every other time he just got knocked off. And it's the
Yeah,
funniest thing. Everybody else
it's
would be
wild.
fine.
Right. Yeah.
That is really, really strange that you mentioned that because something similar happened to me a couple of years ago. I was working with a project with a friend of mine, Bridget. She's with the Paragem Paranormal Group out in the Chicagoland area. And we were collaborating on an audio project where we were reviewing weird books. And the one I had picked was called Flying Saucers and the Three Men, which, in my opinion, is probably my favorite UFO book. It was Gray Baker was involved with it, and it basically invented the Men in Black narrative. And her and I were just talking on the phone, trying to get a little recording going, discussing the story. And every single time I invoked the Men in Black, we would get disconnected, and the Zoom wouldn't work,
Wow.
the phone wouldn't work.
Mm.
And it was only during the Men in Black. We were talking about ghostly stuff and murders and all of that. Phones were fine. As soon as the Men in Black were invoked, we were done. And we eventually ended up scrapping the project.
Wow.
Wow.
Not
That's
because we
why.
were scared, but because we couldn't get the technology to work.
Right. Right.
Everything else, yeah.
So
Probably
they
just
are
a
listening.
right? Just a
They are
coincidence.
listening. Yeah.
There were no
Wow.
coincidences, right?
No.
No,
No.
that's
No, there's
that's
not.
too
There's not.
much. I mean, there's things where it's too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence, then that's called a pattern when stuff like
Yeah,
that starts happening.
Well,
exactly.
Salem is kind of like that too, because we know about it from the witch trials perspective, but Salem really does just feel like it's on cursed kind of land. Like the indigenous people who were here first, if you look at the history of colonization in the United States, once the indigenous folks realized what was going on, they fought back hard. Look at King Philip's War up in Maine. But here in Salem, they looked at the colonizers and they were like, we're not happy that you're taking this land, but you guys are idiots for kind of wanting this land. Negative, cursed connotations ever since the witch trials time. And every time Salem has a big boom, it always cycles back to tragedy. People who believe in the ley line kind of theory, you know how out west there's the healing lines like Sedona, Arizona, and all that good stuff. For people who believe in that theory, Salem is on almost the polar opposite of that kind of thing. We're on the kind of line that draws in all the paranoia and the scariness and that sort of thing.
Wow.
Like if you live in Salem long enough, you'll lose your mind.
Really?
Wow.
Maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but
Wow. Wow.
No, that's
This is
that's
interesting.
fascinating. Yeah, that's very interesting. So you grew up there in Salem. You're from Salem.
I am not from Salem originally.
Okay.
I've lived
Okay.
here for about 25 years, and I grew up in Massachusetts. And I came to Salem specifically to go to the university here, and I ended up staying in Salem because of the history and the paranormal opportunities here in Salem. You'll find that a lot of people who are involved in witchcraft, history, paranormal studies, or even just tourism start elsewhere and then make Salem their home.
Mm,
Wow.
There, there's
interesting.
there's some feeling in Salem for people who've lived here their whole lives, almost wish all the witch talk would go away and they could just get on with it and stop rehashing the shame of the past and all that. Like
Hmm.
a lot of historic places you visit actually have been leveled, like the site of the dungeon, the actual location where the witch dungeon had been, where the people were incarcerated and maybe tortured. You know what's there now? An office building.
Wow.
And that's the location that actually made me go from being pretty skeptical about paranormal phenomena to somebody who wanted to engage with it and learn about it and study it.
As I was about
Let's
to say, I'm guessing that office building, it's pretty haunted.
It's, in my opinion, one of the most haunted places in Salem. And it's crazy because the dungeon itself had been left to rot and it was mostly covered up and buried. There wasn't much of it left. But in the 1950s, the city of Salem sold the land, they excavated what remained, and they put the office building up on that property. And when they were doing the excavation, they found not only chains that the people were held in the dungeon, there was also a bill of rent that people had to pay when they were in the dungeon. Like every
What?
single night you were incarcerated in what they called the witch dungeon now, you had to pay. And even if you were found innocent, you had to pay your rent before they let you out. So
Wow.
That's
definitely makes
insane.
sense to me that there's a lot of unhappy kind of spirits there.
Yeah.
I have a
Oh,
question since everybody and I almost get a sense of with everything that's kind of keeping Salem like all the witch trials and the paranormal, does that bring on a sense of is that what is keeping like Salem like that feeling of like dread or like the ley lines like what you were talking about?
I feel Salem is the perfect recipe for angry ghosts. Because think about it, if you or I were to become a ghost, most likely would be the same way we are in our lifetime, would be relatively affable people, right?
yeah.
And
Hmm.
usually in most hauntings, all it takes is a little bit of recognition and the ghost dissipates. Sometimes they're not even
Right.
conscious. Sometimes they're just like leftover energy. But the ghosts associated with the witch trials, most of those people from 1692 were mean, nasty people. And
Mm,
then they were tortured, which had never happened to anybody. And then their narrative has been twisted up through the years, and we never leave them alone. We keep poking at them. So they were
mm.
mean people who were tortured who don't ever get left alone, which is just a perfect recipe for angry ghosts. It
Right,
Yeah.
almost
right.
feels a little bit like Beetlejuice. You know how when the yuppie couple wanted to be able to promote the ghost and make him perform on cue? And I almost wonder if some of our Salem ghosts might be feeling a little peeved that they're being prodded all the time.
I would guess
Man,
so. It's like, let us rest already. Well, they didn't have zoos then.
we're
We're
not show
not like,
ponies.
we're not a Punch and Judy show or whatever entertainment they had then. We were murdered pretty much. No, not
Right.
pretty much.
Well, you know
Yeah.
what the entertainment was? It was the executions.
Wow.
Mm,
People would come from all over to watch the executions, and they were considered educational for the kids and entertainment for everybody. From what I understand, the expression to have a hangover actually comes from the day after execution
What?
day. The
what?
you would it wasn't Salem specific, this was all over the world, but you would go to see the execution. They actually sold refreshments, and that included alcohol, and you would watch the pageantry of the execution,
Wow.
party, and then the next morning you'd wake up. Not only would you have a headache, you'd feel kind of guilty for having enjoyed the spectacle of the execution. So next time you have a hangover, go back and think about the witch trials and all the other people through the years.
Oh my God,
Like, isn't
that's
that
amazing. That's wild. That's wild.
Yeah.
Uh, you have a diverse background because you're a paranormal investigator.
yes.
Um, you've traveled because Spellbound Tours is more than just the witch trials, kind of like what we're talking about. It deals with the paranormal. It deals with UFOs. It deals with voodoo
So
and even Dracula, vampirism.
so here's where the voodoo comes in, which is really interesting. Are you familiar with Tituba from the witch trials?
No.
No.
She was an enslaved woman who was brought to Salem, and she was sort of the crux of the whole thing. Now, most of the time when she's depicted in the media, she's depicted as somebody of African descent because that's just what we assume enslaved people were. But she was actually an indigenous person from South America, at least according to
Oh.
most stories and the actual slave ship manifests. But before she came to Salem, she was forced to work on a plantation in Barbados. And when she was there, she worked alongside the enslaved African people and she absorbed the cultural practices that they were doing. And that got wrapped into what she was doing that she'd grown up with. But then when the slave owners came around, everybody had to clamp down and cover up what they were really doing and pretend all their rituals were to honor the Christian saints. That
Mm.
combination of Christianity, African religion, Native and Caribbean influence, all of it blended together evolved into what we call voodoo. So Tituba was practicing something similar to voodoo years before that faith even officially had a name. And
Wow.
this fascinating woman ended up in Salem, Massachusetts, and she was property of Reverend Paris, which is just horrible. Can you imagine the minister was a slave owner? That's the
Right.
kind of people who were here in 1692. And she wasn't doing anything wrong. She was one of the only people, if you look through the records in 1692, she doesn't come off like a villain. What she was doing is she was entertaining Reverend Paris's daughter and Reverend Paris's niece, and some of the other kids and teenage girls started to hang out with Tituba. And just to keep them busy and entertain them, we think she was telling stories and folklore. She might have been doing little ritual workings with eggs, telling futures kind of thing. And of course, because these were Puritan girls, they were terrified that their parents would catch them doing this kind of thing with Tituba. They felt that if they got caught, not only would they be severely punished, they might even go to hell. So they had to keep it under wraps, and the guilt was building up and building up inside them. And of course, when they got caught, they panicked and freaked out. And it was from that little seed that the whole witch trials blossomed out.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
Tell us.
That's
Go on,
she
Ryan.
she's my favorite character in the whole thing. And there's an excellent book that's called Tituba, Reluctant Witch of Salem. I plug this book so much, even though I had nothing to do with writing it. But the author, she's a scholar who actually went back and traced the slave ship manifests and goes step by step as to how Tituba got here and what she was actually doing. And the real wild thing is, after the witch trials, she totally disappeared into history. Like, through the years, we've uncovered fairly convincing ghost stories about a ton of the witch trial peoples. It seems like they're all still haunting us. We've also met descendants of people from the witch trials, both the accusers and the victims. In fact, growing up, my best friend was related to the first person who died in the dungeon. And there's
What?
people who, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Roger Toothaker was the guy's name, and he was actually going to plead guilty to witchcraft because he was saying he was doing folk magic and having God intercede instead of the devil. And if that had actually gone to trial, the whole narrative might have been different. But unfortunately, he succumbed to what was called jail fever, which was probably just really bad dysentery. But back to Tituba, we've had people who say they have contact with the spirits. They say they feel engaged with them and lived their lives before. Nobody has ever told me they've seen Tituba's ghost. Nobody's ever been able to trace their family history and legacy to Tituba, and nobody's ever claimed to have shared her experience or have a spiritual type connection with her. So it seems like she and her husband, John Indian, are the only people involved in the witch trials who were able to find peace once it was all done. And I think that's really cool.
Wow.
so with the trials, she wasn't like found guilty or
So
hung or anything.
she was smart. She confessed, and Reverend Parris kind of made her confess. And because she confessed, they used her to point out other witches. And
Oh,
there were plenty of people she wanted to accuse because obviously, as an enslaved person, she wasn't treated so well. And there were
yeah.
also a ton of people that Reverend Parris wanted to make her accuse. So Tituba
Wow.
basically became like a star witness. She was never tried and never convicted. But unfortunately, she didn't have money to pay rent in the dungeon, so she had to languish there until somebody purchased her, and then she disappeared into history. And the final real record of her is there's a little note in the jailkeeper's diary that says, "Today an ignoramus purchased Tituba." And no one knows for sure who the ignoramus was, but it's very mysterious. She's just, after that little note in the jailkeeper's diary, she is gone to history.
That's
Wow.
fascinating. That is wild and crazy. And so, I mean, and here's a crazy question. And so this is the kind of stuff that you do during your ghost tour. during the Spellbound tours. You talk about the history. Do you go into like the paranormal and teach about the paranormal?
Yes. One thing that I always like to do is I like to explain to people what they're looking for on their cameras when they're trying to get ghostly photographs.
Mm.
And one thing I really do a lot of is debunking ghostly photographs. At the end of the tour, I show between like 8 to 12 different ghost photographs, some which are from our investigations, some have been submitted by users, and those like 10 pictures are after looking at thousands and thousands and debunking them through the years. So on any given night, I'll debunk like 20 orbs.
Wow.
Now there
That's
are some orbs that we do believe are energy orbs, but the vast majority of them are just your own lens and light and flash. Like
yeah.
the lenses have become foreshortened, have become really good at capturing the light inside and making a false orb. A way to think about it is if you think you have a ghostly orb photographed, make sure it doesn't have a ring around it or a hole in the center. If your
Mm.
orb looks like, you think of it like a margarita glass, if your orb has a rim around it, that's your own light and flash you got.
Hmm.
Mm.
Potential energy orb would be the same grade of color all the way through.
And is it when you look at those orbs, because a lot of times this is, a lot of times when you watch Ghost Adventures or Ghost Hunters,
Yep.
they go and it you can actually see some type of face or skeleton or something. Is that what
So
you're looking for as well?
in my opinion, when you see the faces in the orbs, for the most part, that's what's called pareidolia. It's evolutionary survival mental mechanism where our mind fills in the details. Like,
Oh,
you know how if you look at the clouds, you'll see shapes of animals in the
right. Yeah.
clouds, or if you look at old wood with knot holes, you'll see faces. Our
Yeah.
mind fills in the details and creates that. And a lot of the technology we're using now, especially if you zoom in real tight or if it's under low light, you'll get a lot of pixelation. And the pixelation plays into the
Yeah.
pareidolia really badly. So a lot of faces are kind of junk. However, that said, every now and again, a real good one sneaks through. There's a building next to the cemetery in Salem. It's known as the Grimshaw House. And the famous author Nathaniel Hawthorne would always hang out in there. And the
Mm.
local legend has it that he would be looking out the window into the cemetery because one of his ancestors is buried there. And he was very angry that
Wow.
his ancestor was one of the judges in the witch trials. And so the story
Mm.
goes he was always like sitting, looking angrily out the window. He probably did. Maybe he didn't, but that's the story is that he was looking out the window all the time. And he did write a story about that house called Dr. Grimshaw's Secret. And on an
Hmm.
afternoon tour, one of our guests just took a random snapshot of that house. And in the same window that Hawthorne was supposed to always be looking out, she got a picture of an apparition that looks just like Hawthorne. You
Wow.
can overlay a portrait of Nathaniel Hawthorne on this possible ghost picture, and it's an almost perfect match. And that's one of the few apparition shots that I have not been able to debunk. That one's really cool.
That's very
And
cool. And,
for a
to add to that, actually, so living in California, obviously in LA, when we lived there, we went down to San Diego, and they have I forget the name of it, but it's the haunted. It's the house, right? It's down in old San Diego.
is it the
Um,
Winchester House?
yes, no, 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 that's in San Jose. The
Okay.
Winchester, no, the San Diego. I forget what it's called. Darn it!
Hold on.
But what is it?
Let me check it out.
Okay. And why you do that? Because
Bring it up,
they
Jamie.
and
Famous
and
haunted house in San Diego.
they
The
we
Whaley
were taking
House.
the
Whaley House.
Whaley, yes,
Yes.
yes. And they have pictures hung up, and the friends that we were with, they were taking pictures, and as when you go to a haunted house or somewhere haunted, you always want to zoom in and look at pictures, and I am not kidding. So they zoom in on one picture, and it's a normal picture. The next picture is it has this weird looking haunted face. It's
Ooh.
like
Wow.
distorted. It's like it's I don't want to say demonic, but it looked demonic. And I was like,
I,
"Oh, I don't want to see that anymore. I'm scared."
That's a trend that I've been noticing a lot is people talking about demons. Like I've
Mm-hmm.
been doing the tour for, oh boy, going back to like 2002, 2003, and I get a lot of people who ask questions about how to deal with ghosts or who want to tell me their ghost stories, and
Mm-hmm.
it's always cool and interesting. But in the past 2 or 3 years, I've been noticing a cultural shift towards people interpreting the phenomena as demonic. And they're describing the same sort of things that people used to ascribe to ghostly phenomena, but for some reason, something in people's brains seems to have flipped to the evil side, which I'm wondering
Mm-hmm.
might be larger cultural, uh, just cultural movement going on. But
Mm-hmm.
it seems like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people have a real fear of demons lately.
I think
You know,
that just comes from, people's religious beliefs,
Hmm.
which religious thing they are more, cling to. Because
mm-hmm.
I know within Christianity, my religion, that is always the thing people blame for supernatural occurrences that are, the negative kind. It's
Mm-hmm.
always blamed on demons. For a while, even UFO encounters were said to be demons masquerading.
Yeah, I actually just watched a crazy videotape on exactly that the other day. It started out as a regular UFO documentary, but in the last 10 minutes it had a real hard switch and said they were all evil. I mean, personally,
Wow.
in my own cosmology, I like to think that the UFOs and the aliens are a positive force, but that's my own opinion.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
some are.
Could it be Eric and Mike? Could it be because of shows like Ghost Adventures, where they always because before when we were doing a lot of with our paranormal podcast, we would always talk about like Ghost Adventures. Particularly, they do like the bro hunting,
Yes,
right? And
Ghost
it's be like.
Bros.
Yeah, and it would be like that hardcore. I know you're a demon. Come on out, and you can't do this, and you can't do
Come at
that.
me, demon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and is that one of the things too? I don't know. Just
Any
spitballing
anytime we see a pop culture thing, the culture at large kind
catches
of
on.
comes onto it. Like the Conjuring movies.
Ugh.
I think those were great because they got so many people interested in paranormal investigation.
Yeah.
Even highly fictionalized accounts like that, I think it's in the end positive. Like some people were mad about the Salem TV show because it was
Mm.
so outlandish. It was like a supernatural horror TV show
Yeah.
set in Salem. And, there were some things I was like, haha, that's so inaccurate. But at the end of the day, I'm glad it existed and it was cool because people watched it and made them want to come to Salem. So it really
Yeah.
feels like any sort of media representation is good because even if they come here with a misunderstanding of history, once they get here, they'll probably learn the real thing. And I think it's
Yeah.
really important because we as people, we're no different than the Puritans. We just have better technology. Humanity is still just as like hateful and awful,
Yeah.
but I think by teaching stories like the witch trials, maybe we can get better. If people
Yeah.
see like the miscarriage of justice and what like hatred and fanaticism does to everybody, if we teach the story, maybe it might flip a little and people start learning to be better.
Well, yeah, it comes to
That's
that old
awesome.
saying, those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. You look at the Salem witch trials, that's pretty much the McCartney hearings, were pretty much the same thing as those. It's still looking for witches. Even today, we do that. We're still witch hunting, that, and it's become a term people use when they feel everybody's coming against them. Oh, this is just a witch hunt against me.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's used so often, and I feel it's almost overused sometimes, and we start to lose track of the tragedy of an actual witch hunt sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At different times in history, though, Salem was used for all sorts of political reasons, like take the American Civil War. There was sometimes in the Southern rhetoric, they would say, well, look at those Yankees. Look how dumb they are. Just 200 years ago, they were hanging witches. Can you believe it?
Mhm.
Like it
Yeah.
shows up like we see it now in national politics. People
Yep.
invoke the term witch hunt,
Yep.
but even back then they were using it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Hey,
right.
when people come to Salem and they go on your tour, and it sounds like they bring all their stuff that they've ever heard, and when you start talking to them about the actual history, what are some of their reactions when they actually learn that the things that they hear as opposed to things that really happen? What's that like for you? And does it happen? Do people come and change?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There are people who've come in with very solid preconceived notions about what the people were doing and what life was like, and just to see them get so shocked. For example, Giles Corey. Do you remember the story about him?
Mm-mm.
He was the man who was painfully pressed to death under all the stones. And if
Okay,
you want,
I've
I can
heard of
tell you
him.
about.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And he, in most media, is presented as a very heroic kind of figure. And yes, he did stand his ground and he did refuse to plead. But if you strip away the crucible and things in the museum, he was a nasty guy. Like he beat somebody to death. He beat his wife.
Really?
He accused his second wife of witchcraft. And I see people's faces fall because I'm talking about Giles Corey, the big jerk, and they've had him promoted since grade school as an American hero.
Wow.
And there were some heroic people during the witch trials at Tituba, for example, but Giles Corey, on the other hand, was a selfish, nasty guy.
Wow.
I think learning the real history is going to just, in the end, benefit people. And I think people like having their preconceived ideas changed and challenged. And also, I am very open to new developments in the case. Every couple of years, there's big new bombshells that come out, and the narrative actually changes. It was only within the past 10 or 15 years that the actual hanging location was 100% pinned down.
Really?
Yeah, that's actually right around the corner from where I live. It's called Proctor's Ledge. And they've had
Wow.
a very discreet memorial there. But for centuries, there's been debate. Did they hang him over here? Did they hang him over here? But with proper scholarship and teams from the university, they actually pinpointed that the Proctor's Ledge location is where the hangings took place. And I can tell you that is a very sad, heavy feeling kind of place
Mm.
even for people who don't believe in paranormal phenomena at all. If you go to the Proctor's Ledge location, you'll definitely feel a heaviness and a sadness.
You know that
Wow.
there's a lot of places that have that. I think wherever multiple deaths happen, like when we were filming our movie, we were on a friend's hunting reserve, and we were in the area where they would, dress the animals after killing them. And there was just a weird heaviness in that area that I could not explain to you. So before we get deep into, Spellbound and what you guys do, I just have a question. I think we have this wrong idea of the way the women and some men were killed. I remember hearing that in America we didn't burn witches at the stake. That was mainly done in Europe. Is there any truth to that?
That is totally correct. There were no people burned at the stake for witchcraft in Salem. That carries over from the various Inquisition traditions from Europe. Here we were implementing English law, and the punishment was just all about hanging. But
Mm.
it wasn't a nice hanging. The noose was specifically tied in such a way that it would slowly strangle you.
Ooh.
So, yeah,
Oh
just because nobody
wow.
got burned doesn't mean they were giving them an easy way out.
Well, what about
Wow.
like the drowning and stuff like that? Was that
Oh,
again
yes.
Europe or was that us also?
No, that's called swimming a witch or dunking a witch. And the idea was if you had somebody suspected of being a witch, you could tie him up and dunk him into a body of water. And if they floated or swam, that meant they were a witch, and you could go ahead and try them and kill them. If they sank and drowned, they weren't a witch, but it's okay because maybe they went to heaven. They did that in Connecticut during the witch trials down in
Wow.
Connecticut, but they did not do that in Salem. Here in Salem, they just wanted a quick trial and a quick hanging.
Wow.
Wow.
But yeah, the,
See,
Wow.
the,
now I
the
got that
dunking,
scene from the Holy Grail stuck in my head where
yes.
they're trying to. And what do
Uh,
ducks do? Float. What
oh,
do witches do? Float.
Now, since you're a horror guy and you brought up the burning, have you ever seen a movie called Burned at the Stake?
No, but I'm gonna check it out now.
It's I like to recommend this to everybody I meet who's interested in Salem, who's also a horror person, because it was filmed in Salem in the early 1980s, and a lot of it was filmed in places like the Witch Museum, and it was filmed on all the streets of Salem, and it's really cool to see what Salem looked like 40 years ago versus today. It's a hard to find movie. I don't think it's been released on any current formats, but it's worth seeing just for the beautiful scenes of Salem alone. And Laurie Cabot, the official witch of Salem, actually did witchcraft technical advising for the movie. So, it's a
Oh,
little bit authentic.
Wow.
while we're on movies filmed in Salem, a few years ago there was this movie called Hysteria that I believe was filmed there. It was about this community theater who's doing a play based on the Salem witch trials, and like a zombie virus breaks out. And now, or that, or an actual witch thing happens, and it's like a modern witch trial. It's a pretty good movie.
Okay. Was it called Mass Hysteria?
I believe so. Yes,
Okay.
yes. It
Yeah.
was done a few years ago.
If we're thinking of the same movie, one of the people who was involved in that actually used to work as a tour guide for me, if we're
Oh,
thinking of
wow.
the same
Yeah, it
movie.
was about tour
Yeah.
guides. Yeah.
Nope.
That's cool.
I think my friend Sarah was involved with that. So that's cool. Yeah,
That's
Salem
very
is great for making movies. I know you mentioned the Lords of Salem movie.
Yeah.
Uh, The Witch wasn't filmed here, but it did have a Salem premiere where they had the filmmakers do a little panel with some modern day witches, and that was really cool to see.
Which makes
that's very
perfect
cool.
sense
Yeah.
for that movie. I mean, yeah, that makes, yeah.
I feel like
That's
that's a
very cool.
pretty accurate representation of what Puritan life would have been like, just that austere misery.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
it's fascinating. How did you want or how did you start doing the tour?
So
Where do you start when it comes to something like that? This is fascinating.
So I grew up being interested in the phenomena, very interested in all the paranormal stuff and scaring myself with books in the school library they probably shouldn't have had there. Um, when I was talking to Eric, I believe about sightings, that was got me excited
Yes,
about
yes,
being
yes.
part of this because you said you guys were inspired by the Sightings TV show too. I always used to watch that, and I always loved these kind of stories, but I didn't really necessarily have a vested interest in it or think it was literally real until I had an experience when I was in Salem, Massachusetts. I was actually in
Mhm.
college and I was working, it was a temporary job in the office building where the dungeon had been. And it was pretty weird because every so often, me and the girl I worked with in that office, we would hear what sounded like footsteps going up and down the hallway
Wow.
and nobody was there, but would hear the footsteps. And come to find out, it was around the time people think that the sheriff might have been checking on people in the cells. And then one day we were there, and she actually got attacked by something that we couldn't see. Like she was sitting down, she got up, and she was pushed right back down. And she got up
Wow.
again, pushed back down again, and then she got up again and got slapped in the face. And when I saw that, it made me start wondering if there might be something to start looking deeper into. And at that point, I'd already been working in the Salem tourist industry, working at the various attractions. And I ended up meeting a woman named Mollie Stewart, who is the woman who founded Spellbound Tours, and basically apprenticed from her. And when she retired, I took over the company from her. And I learned a lot about investigative techniques and all of that from her. She was, for the time, extremely groundbreaking, and she is the reason that we talk about the voodoo stuff initially, because she was from New Orleans and she
Mhm.
was a voodoo practitioner, which was very unique at the
Oh,
time.
wow.
Wow.
So yeah, that's how I got involved is I witnessed a paranormal interaction, and then I wanted to go further into it, and I found somebody who was a professional in the field and just started working with them. It's always the kind of thing somebody falls into. Most of the time you don't
Yeah.
looking to make it your career, it kind of takes over you.
Wow. 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 On your tour, do you do paranormal ghost hunts?
So on the tour, we don't bring any equipment or anything like that.
Okay.
because that distracts people from the history and the storytelling.
Right,
And
right, right.
also, if you have people who aren't trained how to use it, they'll be getting false readings and it'll be going off.
Hmm.
And you have a detector and I have a detector, and we get them too close, they'll be setting each other off.
Right,
So
right.
I generally, just so it doesn't taint the evidence, we don't mess with equipment on the tour.
Hmm.
That said, we do sometimes actually go out and do investigations at haunted sites. We
That's
used to do
cool.
more of that before COVID, obviously, but we've done investigations all over the place. And
Oh.
it's pretty exciting stuff. I mean, I
So,
live in a haunted house.
oh, go on. You can't just
Yes,
leave us like
yes.
that. You gotta go on.
So I live, it's a sea captain's mansion, which has been cut up and turned into apartments. And very early when I moved in, uh, I walked the dog and we walked around the block and we went to go back in the house. And I opened the first door, we walked in, opened the second door to the apartment, and from inside, we heard a woman's voice say, "Good dog." And there
Wow.
was nobody in the house. And I thought, huh, I thought maybe a friend had come over, but then I realized she didn't have keys. And then
Mm.
the dog was just staring. He was staring into the corner of the room, the same corner from which the voice emanated. And I like drag him in. And yeah, that happened. So we have at least the
I would
woman.
have moved right away. Like, yeah, I'm good. Catch you
Oh, but
later.
it gets better. There have been occasions where I've been out walking him and I would get a text from my friend who was in here and she would say, "Did you come in and not say goodnight?" I'm like, "Nope, we're still walking." She said she'd heard what sounded like human footsteps and little doggy footsteps.
No.
And what we
Wow.
think it is we believe that the captain, he went down at sea, and we believe the ghost here is his widow and some of the animals she took in to fill the space when he died. And also recently, my little guy is no longer with us. And I keep
Hmm.
hoping that his ghost is going to pop up and say hello. Like
Aw,
that's
that's
that's like the number one, honestly, my favorite part of Salem over all of the ghosts and UFOs and all that stuff, and all the history. It's what a dog friendly city Salem is. Like, if
Oh,
mm,
you guys come to visit Salem and you have dogs, bring them. Almost every shop will stuff them full of treats.
oh.
really. You know,
Steve Rogers, my Yorkie, is sleeping right now, and he would definitely come with me when I if I ever come to when I come to visit.
But when you come on the
hmm.
tour, everybody who comes on the tour gets a sticker so we can identify them. And when people bring a dog, I give the dogs the stickers too.
That's
That's
cool.
awesome.
Oddly enough, I was just talking to Eric before you hopped on, before we record, that me and my wife were thinking about going to Salem in October.
No.
And now maybe this is
That's
another, yeah. And Eric was like, "Oh, I'll meet you over there." He's in Jersey. It's like a four
close.
hour, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
So
amazing.
here's the thing. If you're going to come for October, drive up here now because
yeah,
it's that busy in October.
I could imagine.
Really?
Yeah.
My recommendation to visit is come in the late spring or early summer because
Hmm.
all the attractions will
Okay.
be open. There'll still be people. Sometimes the street performers are out and there's the fairs and the events like the Vampire Ball and all that good stuff. If you
Oh,
Yeah.
come in October, you're going to be shoulder to shoulder with people.
Mm.
Like to give you an idea, where I live, it's about a 20-minute walk to where the tour starts. If I'm lazy, it's a 5-minute Uber. Last October, I tried to Uber home and I stopped counting after an hour.
wow.
Yeah.
It's like New York City traffic.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. It's wild in October. But what's really cool is seeing everybody in all their costumes.
Yeah.
You have everything from like just off the rack at Walmart to Hollywood special effects quality. You've got
Wow.
like families in it, and you've got like the students just being all ridiculous. And you mentioned Hocus Pocus. Every other group is Sanderson Sisters.
I could
Sanderson.
imagine. I
That's
could
right.
imagine.
See like
That's right.
drag queen Sanderson Sisters. We've seen like old lady Sanderson Sisters, little
I
kids
love it.
Sanderson Sisters. We saw a bunch of dogs as the Sanderson Sisters.
That's the best.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
So
You
you,
know,
oh, go on, Larry. Go on.
I was just gonna say, Mike, you really have seen it all, and I don't think it's like lost on you about because obviously talking to you about the rich history that you not only wake up to every day, but you live with it. I mean, you live and you breathe this. Do things ever surprise you? Do you continue to learning or to learn about Salem, or do you pretty much do you know everything that goes on? I guess is what
Every day I learn something about it.
wow.
Wow.
It would be super arrogant to ever say you knew everything about Salem because, like I said, new stuff keeps being discovered. For example, I mean this is old news, but I bet a lot of people listening don't know it. The first elephant that came to the United States was brought over by a Salem merchant.
Really?
Yeah, and it's just wild because he it was one of the Crown and Shield merchants, the richest person in America at the time, made a deal to buy this elephant, and he loaded it up onto the ship. And before they even got halfway back to the United States, they ran out of water rations because they didn't realize how much water an elephant would drink, and they had to make do by giving it the sailors' beer rations.
I love that.
Yep, the elephant never took a drink of water again, according to folklore. It was just drunk forever, and that was the first elephant to land on American soil was imported by a Salem merchant. Now,
Wow.
most versions of the story have him landing in Salem first, but he actually did touch down in New York first for a little bit, but shh, we can still call it the Salem elephant because a Salem merchant paid for his transportation over here.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
So,
like that
amazing.
that sort of thing. I love learning that sort of thing. We're always digging and trying to find new little fun, weird nuggets like that.
so that was gearing into, what I want to talk about before we close. Besides all the, the paranormal stuff, just tell us about Salem as a town. Because it does have this oddly enough, a cozy atmosphere to it when you see it on TV and everything. What is it like being there, all year round?
So I always try to look at it through the eyes of a visitor. Because obviously, when you live somewhere every day, you start to see the cracks show up.
Yeah.
But I like to look at it through the eyes of the people who come on the tour. And it's very charming. It's very interesting. And it's a city. It's a real city. It's got city problems, but it also has like sort of small New England charm. What I like about it is the real community aspect of Salem. It's a very progressive kind of city. Everybody's safe in Salem. You're not going to be bothered for being the kind of person that would get bothered in certain places. It's very open and accepting of everybody and just the various communities that have sprung up. For example, the that Salem Scare Society I mentioned. It was a group of friends who wanted to get together and celebrate their love of horror movies and promote that and branch out from that, and also promote positive things like not being explicitly political about anything, but promoting acceptance and tolerance and good quality of life. And that's what something that's nice about Salem is that everybody fits in Salem, if that makes
I
sense.
love that. It does.
And
It
also, like I
does. It's
said, the dog friendliness. I love that so much.
Yeah, that's what's standing out to me the most also as a huge dog lover.
yeah, yeah. And as a side note, looking at your website, and here's the thing that may be weird, maybe not. I look at like zip codes
Yeah,
because obviously they're in New York and even in Massachusetts, like your zip code starts with a zero. And and to me, I think that means that it's like and you're like one of the 13 colonies, right, that started America. And
it
I
was
like looking at that stuff and realizing going, wow, that's kind of cool. Starts with a zero.
it was founded in 1626.
Jeez.
That's when Salem was officially founded. And obviously, the indigenous people had been here even before that. So Salem
Yeah.
is really, really old. And here's another
Wow.
fact about Salem a lot of people don't know. Speaking of the old colonists, Johnny Cash, the great American
Yeah.
musician, I believe he was born in Arkansas. He did his best recordings in Memphis. Where do you think his ancestors landed first?
No
No.
way.
Salem, Massachusetts. Johnny Cash's first
Wow.
American ancestor is buried in the cemetery where we go looking for ghosts every night.
No
That is
way.
Nope.
crazy.
Captain William Cash landed in Salem. And we can't
Wow.
escape Salem no matter where we go. A couple of years ago, I was in New Orleans. I went with my friend Michelle, and we were escaping Salem to beat tourists elsewhere. And we were in that great famous cemetery in New Orleans, and we found Marie Laveau, the Voodoo Queen. And obviously, we
Yeah.
took pictures of both her real tomb and her false tomb. And just a few over was a random Salem sea captain who died in New Orleans.
Wow.
So once you end up in Salem, it ends up following you everywhere.
Wow.
That's
Just
crazy.
another thing. Here's another thing. Literary stuff. Everybody knows about Nathaniel Hawthorne, but H.P. Lovecraft,
Mm.
writer, horrible
Yeah,
person.
Yeah.
yeah.
He visited Salem because he was obsessed with Nathaniel Hawthorne.
Wow.
Some of his best writings were actually inspired by the buildings he saw in Salem and the creepy little houses. Like
Wow.
it's fun. You can wander around like the side streets of Salem, and in some places, it does still look like it would have a couple hundred years ago. But
That
also
is
keep in
so
mind that
awesome.
in other places, it's very modern. Um, yeah, you're not going to come here and it's not going to look just like the Sleepy Hollow movie or anything, but it does have a lot of the old charm still here.
Okay. Okay. I'm sold. I'll be there
I
in
think Larry's
late
booking
spring.
his ticket.
Yeah,
Late
I
spring.
saw. Yeah, send me an email and I will send you a big long list of the good things to do.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And you know that when we go, Eric, you'll come and
Oh yeah.
we should do a live
Eric,
with
you don't
you.
have an excuse. You're in New Jersey. You could be up here
That
I
tonight.
is
know, I
true.
know. I'm not that far away at all. I'm an Amtrak ride.
Oh, do you want me to reserve a ticket for you for tonight? Got time. I'll put you down for
No,
one.
no, we'll talk over email about me coming to visit sometime.
That
This
would be
sounds like
amazing.
something I've always
You've
wanted
got
to. I
to.
just never put
Yeah.
the action into it.
You've got to. That would be super. And you're right there. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the fascinating part about being able to talk to people that know the history of places. And I mean, this is the stuff that it's been fascinating talking to you, Mike, about Salem and the paranormal. I mean, you have a lot of aspects to your experiences that we haven't even covered. But
This is
I
part one.
think,
We're gonna have you
yeah,
back on,
we
definitely.
got
I
to.
could talk to you guys for hours. I love this stuff.
I love it. I love it. I love it. You're so fascinating. And now to be able to, I know we just met, but I mean, it's like, meeting people for the first time, you get a vibe and just, I
Yeah.
can't wait to come to Salem and to say, Mike, we're in town. We're going to come see you. Hey, here, we just bought 2 tickets.
I'll
Here's 3 tickets because Eric.
you guys get the VIP passes.
Oh,
Oh,
I
okay.
love it. I love it. I love it. I can't believe it. Mike, I know for me, this has been fascinating and I
Yes.
think this goes along like what we were talking about with your tours, very educational. It's the
Yeah,
truth. And in the truth is stranger than fiction.
exactly.
I mean, and I think that's one of the best parts about who you are and what you do is it's even more fascinating than what people think and it's jaw-dropping. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you
Well,
very much.
like one of the things I always want to just instill into people. For example, we talk about the vampire legends and folklore, as well as people who live that life today. And whenever I tell the story, I always do a little joke where I'm like, and it could be you. And I point to the like least likely to stereotypically be a vampire person in the whole group, because I want them to know it could be anybody. Anybody could be anything. And that's
Yeah.
one of the beautiful things about Salem.
Wow. Well, again, Mike, thank you so much for coming on. It has been an absolute thrill. And again, we will have you back on. I'm thinking multiple times. You're going to be a multiple time offender
You got
when it
to.
comes to the podcast.
I'd be
So
happy to chat. I had fun.
all
I
of
love
the
it.
links to Spellbound Tours will be in the links in the description if you're listening in over on Spotify. And when the episode goes up, everything will be tagged in our Instagram. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And I'm going to have to do two closings. Number one, remember everybody, support New Life Village. And also, stay spooky, everybody.